Good afternoon. Before I start, let's get some audience participation in. Who here is afraid that your jobs or your children's jobs might be taken over by bots, by robots, by AI, by machines? Can I just see a show of hands? Is anyone worried about that? Nice one, Ben. Yeah, so you're pretty optimistic, much more optimistic than Cambridge University was a few years ago. They thought that 47% of our jobs would disappear as a result of automation. OECD did a global research around it earlier this year. They were a bit more optimistic, maybe a bit more in line with you guys. They said only 14% of the jobs would disappear. And very much in line with what we've seen in earlier presentations today, those were the jobs that were lower skilled, entry-level jobs, not so much jobs in Northern Europe, maybe more in Eastern Europe, Mexico, India. We would see much bigger impacts. But that is still 66 million jobs in 32 countries. Now, I still would like to take it with a pinch of salt, because we now have about 500,000 Salesforce administrators in the world. They weren't there 20 years ago. So all this kind of innovation, automation, AI is also creating a lot of new jobs. I want to take the next 25 minutes or so to talk you through a research that we have done. And this research is done to consumers, but I think it has a very strong play in the business-to-business space as well. But it's a campaign for us as Verint Systems that we run every year, and we take slightly different topics every year, and it gives us a mountain of content that we use when we reach our customers, and a lot of our customers are the CX buyers, they are B2B businesses. Last year we did a research around the digital tipping point, and we looked at how people like to engage with companies, if they were getting more digital, and the challenge between digital and human. This year we looked a little bit ahead. We started trying to predict what might happen in the future of customer experience and the future of work. So in order to do a bit of gazing into the future, we involved a futurologist, Professor James Woodhousen from London Bank University. He's a physicist, so he's a really clever guy, and he's been doing futurology for more than 20 years and has actually been quite accurate in his predictions. But we also have used the research from the last couple of years to start drawing some trends and graphs and looking at what's actually happening with customer experience, how is it developing. We've done the research globally, so 36,000 consumers, so that's people like you and me, in 18 countries. And while it is a consumer research, I think everything that we've learned from this survey really applies to the B2B environment as well. We're all people, and people buy from people. You want to buy from companies you like. We all behave in similar way, often in business as we do in private. You may be expecting similar levels of customer service that you get in your personal life, similar engagement through digital channels and more traditional channels as you would do in your business role and in your business life. So let's just dive straight into it, because the first thing that we looked at was loyalty. I think it's a really big issue for us all. Customer churn is very, very costly. So loyalty, we describe loyalty as if you've been with a provider for more than 3 years, so imagine your bank or an insurer or a telco. If you've been with them for more than 3 years, that's considered loyal. When we did the same research 3 years ago, we saw that 61% of the people fell in that category of being a loyal customer. This year it was only 50%, so a trend line is quite easy to draw when you look at those 3 points. So consumers are becoming less loyal. And why is this? Is it in particular sectors? For instance, here in the UK, it's so easy now to switch your insurer. I'm actually amazed with how high it still is, because we all know that the renewal quotes are always higher than if you go and shop around and go to compare the market. But even banks, the most traditional of businesses, where people used to be with for their whole lives, they've seen a huge decline, and all the challengers and challenger banks are coming up, and they suddenly have to replace all those customers, just like we have to do in our organizations as B2B marketeers. And I suspect, when you look at actually these charts, that everything is going to go in the same direction as maybe online retail and travel. I think that some of them might hang on a bit longer and keep their customers a bit longer, but it's all declining. So who is changing? Who is less loyal? Is it those pesky millennials? We all struggle with millennials in the workforce because there's no loyalty, they're impatient, they want immediate rewards. And yes, the millennials and Generation Z are definitely showing less loyalty than, for instance, the baby boomers. But having said that, you look at these stats here, 2018 in blue, 2015 in green, every generation is becoming less loyal. So we're all showing less loyalty to our providers of businesses and services and products. Now, what's behind that? I think two really big factors in the buying decisions are no-brainers: product and price. If you've got a good product at the right price, then you're already on your way. But I think there's three other categories that are equally, if not more important than product and price, because there's always someone who can copy your products and build or create a product or a service better than you and at a lower price than you. It just happens. We will see it happening over and over again. A good customer experience is really hard to offer and to replicate and to design into your organization. And actually, it is a massive, massive influencer in the buying decision. And you can see here that more than 20% actually says it's their only deciding factor. I don't really care if the product is more expensive. I will pay more money as long as I get that good customer experience. And for more than 80%, it's actually really important. And people will vote with their feet if you don't deliver a good customer experience. Now, everyone is getting more and more digital customer experiences. And the challenge here is that people are, in general, don't really feel that those experiences are good enough, they're fast enough, they're intuitive enough. So there's quite a bit of work to be done here for organizations. And I think what we also saw is that a lot of people find that it needs to be easier to just sort your issues online or through an app rather than having to call or on a store or go into a store. I wanted to cancel a newspaper subscription, which I got online. You think I could actually cancel it online? Of course not. I had to call them, and I had to explain why I wanted to leave and go through the whole IVR and all the challenges with that. It's painful, and we don't want that. And just because we expect that in our personal life, I think in our business life it's very similar too. Like I said before, our experience as a consumer determine how we also behave and what we expect in business. But there's two other factors that I think that we've seen becoming really important, and it was touched upon earlier in one of the sessions on this stage. We're seeing an emergence of the ethical consumers. People really care about how we act as businesses, how we all treat our staff, how if we are environmentally friendly, if we're honest, if we there's lots of reasons why people care about how we behave as a company in lots of areas that they care about. And it really surprised me how much of an influence this was. But actually, when I started thinking about it, it didn't really. So 20 years, 30 years ago, we had Greenpeace going around in rubber boats on the North Sea, trying to make people aware of what was going on with Shell at that time. And they were trying to get awareness. Nowadays, it's everywhere. We're all painfully aware of the Me Too issue, and everyone's had to publish their data. Volkswagen, their emissions scandal, really hurting. Oxfam has to redesign their whole business model because sponsors, both businesses and consumers, have stepped away from sponsoring and donating money to them because of the scandals in Haiti and other places. These companies are judged by the behavior of their staff, not even only just of the headquarters and what they're doing, whether they're paying their taxes. They are being judged, and we all find out so much quicker through social media, and the press, of course, is very quick to jump on it. And not to mention the Me Too campaign that went on and the awareness that's increased there. So we're all much more aware and everything gets much more amplified. So how we behave as a business is hugely important. And again, I would like to reiterate, in a B2B environment, it's exactly the same. People don't want to associate themselves with brands that don't behave in the right way. Look at the challenges that we've seen with Cambridge Analytica, for instance. But also, again, companies taking away sponsorship from large organizations like FIFA when the scandal broke. All the big sponsors pulled out. The fifth reason, so we had product, price, we had customer experience, ethical consumer, and finally the skeptical consumer. People really care about how we treat their data. And we're all being forced now with GDPR to be really good corporate citizens, otherwise we get big fines slapped on us. But I would argue that we should have done it anyway. We should do the right things for our customers. We shouldn't wait for some law to come into place and tell us how we need to protect our customers' data and that we have to encrypt it. This is really basic stuff. And actually 58% of the people said that they didn't want to engage with a company that had a hack. I don't think they realize how many companies have suffered data hacks. And even in the B2B space, there's a huge number of companies that have had data hacks. And consumers really care. What we did find, however, is that in countries where the laws are less stringent, think Mexico, for instance, people are more worried than they are in Germany, where the laws always have been quite strict. And now, of course, with GDPR in Europe. So it's not just the new businesses like Facebook that are kind of vulnerable to data hacks. It's traditional bricks and mortar businesses like Target, Under Armour. I mean, I buy my gym gear at Under Armour. Why do they have data on me? But they do, and they're going to have big fines. I think we're going to see the first GDPR data fine potentially with Currys and PC World that broke just after GDPR. But I think everyone needs to treat very carefully when they think of their customer data, and not just because of GDPR. Customers really care, and your business information is just as valuable as your personal information. So those were a few of the factors that looked at why customers might not be so loyal the way they are. And if you look at the skeptical, actually let's take one step back to the skeptical consumer, because I think this is all really relevant for all of you. I like it when service is personalized to me and my interests. I like it when marketing is personalized to me and my interests. Compared to 2 years ago, this has gone down. And this was before Cambridge Analytica. So I think if we would ask people now, that number will be even lower. So personalization, sure, it's great, but be so careful how you do it, because people will really only want to get personalized offers and service and they want you to use data that they have given you, not data that you found out through a backdoor somewhere. Be really, really careful how you use what they give you, and treat that information very carefully, and don't be creepy. Because all the other points, they want to know how secure it is, they don't trust us to use data ethically, and they don't feel we do enough to protect the data. It's a huge, huge issue. So here's James, lovely Professor James Woodhausen. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here today, but he helped us with designing this research and also analyzing it. And he's saying, given all the other factors that are so important, is the future of customer service and customer experience about loyalty? I would argue I would take it further. I would say loyalty is dead. You only have to make one misstep. You have a data breach, or you have a huge gender pay gap, or you use a sweatshop in China that you shouldn't have used, and your customers will vote with their feet. Whether they are businesses who are scared of the associations, whether they are consumers. And I've said, if you want loyalty, get a dog, because customers are just not giving you that loyalty anymore. So, second part of the research, we looked at, well, how do people actually want to communicate with organizations? So now we know customer experience, the third largest factor, deciding factor when buying a service or a good. How do people want to communicate with us, with all of us? So when do consumers want a human touch? So this is, we didn't just say, how would you like to talk to a company? That doesn't really give us any insight. So we said, if you want to change your account details, how do you want to do that? And what's really interesting is that you can see people more and more realize they can do it all quite themselves through the digital channels that are available to them. There's a lot of simple stuff that we can do ourselves digitally. We don't need help of people. And in fact, we might be afraid that we're going to get upsells, and we don't really want that. We want to do it quickly. So there are still some people who want to do it in person. And don't be mistaken, there's also a huge number of millennials in there. Because they're young, they're learning, they need help with learning and doing their business. So don't think that once the millennials are all here, we're all going digital. It's just not the way. And what's also really interesting is the differences in countries. So I'm from Holland, and we are like the most digital country. One of the explanations I have for that is that Holland is completely wired up. It's cabled up, it's got copper under the ground, it's super fast internet everywhere. I live just outside London, and with a bit of luck, I get 5 megabits a second download speed. Let's just not even talk about my upload speed. It's non-existent. So the infrastructure also in Japan is very good. So there's a lot of early adapters. Maybe a bit of chicken and egg, but still there's huge differences. UK nicely stuck in the middle. I'm really surprised with the USA. I thought the USA would have been much more digital. But again, there's probably huge differences, whether you're living in the middle of Missouri somewhere or whether you're living in downtown New York, right? So now I have a complaint, a really emotional issue. How am I going to contact my provider? Well, actually, I want to speak to someone over the phone or in store, thank you very much, and I want them to understand me, I want them to offer that personal touch, and I want them to say that they're sorry and that they're going to sort out all my problems. I might do it by email because I have a record. I know exactly when I sent it, and it's there, and they can't deny it. But you can see here, speaking to someone in person or over the phone, more than 50% of the people. Again, it's gone up since 2 years ago. People are learning how to use the different channels. If you're thinking of implementing live chat, only do it if you've got everything else really well joined up. Customers are getting really disillusioned with web chats. Even with Apple, yesterday, I had to wait for 3 minutes until a web chat agent was available. That's just not good enough. If I want to speak to someone on the phone, maybe 3 minutes is good enough. If I want a web chat, I want it now. I don't want to wait. Or tell me that if I can speak to a robot, I can speak to a robot now, web chat agent in 1 minute, and a phone agent is available in 5 minutes. That's all fine, but set expectations and make sure it's all connected up so you have that customer information at your hands wherever and however the customer chooses to engage with you. The customer is hugely empowered, and they'll choose what way they want to talk to you. Surprisingly enough, India became very digital suddenly when it came about complaining, which maybe is something cultural, maybe they don't want to do it face-to-face, but again, Netherlands right up there, very digitally focused, and I would have thought actually they're very good at complaining. We quite like to complain face-to-face. UK right in the middle again, and I am actually quite surprised how many people are willing to use digital channels for complaints. But let's remember, email is in there as well, right? And people said that they really like to complain through email as well as in person or over the phone. So what we are seeing is there's a lot more digital interactions coming, whether it's in complaints or whether it is just through other engagement with companies. And my father was on chat with a company, and he said they didn't understand my question, so I asked the same question again, and he did it 5 times, and then he realized he was talking to a bot. He said, I think it might have been a robot. I said, I think you're probably right. Maybe you should have changed your question, right? It's fine trying stuff through bots, and our research showed people are quite happy to go through self-service channels. So if you have knowledge base, maybe even online communities, and bots and AI that help you with providing customer service to your customers. But when they then do speak to a person, it's more emotional, more emotive, and they want to be understood, they want to be helped the first time around. So by the time they get to that person, which is, by the way, the lowest paid people in your organizations, they have a real issue and they need someone to show empathy, to be empowered, to help them, to understand their questions, to have all the systems at their fingertips to help them. And these are the people that we're paying £14,000 a year, right, at the call phase of our organizations. And it's so much more important when it gets to that person that we get it right. So I think that's a really important takeaway. I promised that we would also talk about the future of work. So we're looking at automation, and we're hearing it everywhere today. AI, machine learning, bots are coming into place. People are seeing that it will help them do their jobs more effectively, but they're worried. Like Oxford University was, and the OECD to a point, they're worried it will take over their jobs. But they also think it might make my job better. And I think this is nothing new, so you might recognize this from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, written in 1963 by Roald Dahl. And Charlie's dad lost his job because the robots came. And they could screw the tops on the toothpaste tubes every day, all day long, without any problem. This was 50 years ago, more than 50 years ago. We've been having the agricultural revolution, we've been having the industrial revolution, and now we're getting to artificial intelligence. So sure, jobs are going to change. But actually, Charlie's dad gets his job back at the end of the movie because the robots break down. So, we now have 500,000 Salesforce administrators to help us dealing with that part of the automation. So, if you look at bots and millennial in the workplace, the millennials, it's actually Generation Z, to be honest, in green, and the global average in blue. You can see that people are recognizing that automated processes are being used in their workplace. And that it augments manual labor. So they haven't said yet that it replaces manual labor, but they do see that tasks and processes are increasingly being automated. More than 2/3 see that. The millennials are actually quite upbeat about it. They think it makes them do their jobs more effectively. But they're also more worried that their jobs are going to be taken over, 52%. The flip side, I mentioned it earlier, they think they can work more flexibly, work will be able to suit my personal preferences going forward, something really like. So there's a real kind of balance to be had, the people being worried about it, but also seeing the opportunity. And let's face it, it's not going to go away. Even if we all decide that we're done with automation and we want just a human touch, it just doesn't work. This will be here to stay. And in order for all of us to compete on an international scale, we're going to have to embrace automation. We're going to have to embrace artificial intelligence, or someone else will do it. But the customer wants human contact to remain part of the customer service and the customer experience. Like my dad, they think maybe the bots won't understand me. But as long as they can escalate to a person, they're happy to speak to a chatbot. And this is the same in business to business as in business to consumer. So just because we can automate certain processes doesn't mean we have to, right? I've heard a lot on the radio recently and on the television about bots replacing humans, like as doctors. Robots actually make better doctors than a doctor does, because it can look at all the input that you give as a patient, and it just has this huge database, and it is better at diagnosing what's wrong with you. Yet, will we trust a robot? Will we allow robots to make mistakes like doctors do? We didn't trust the robot with the driving car example in Arizona. When one person was killed with a self-driving car in Arizona, they stopped the whole project. There's thousands of people being killed on the roads every month. And we have one fatal accident with a self-driving car, and we can the whole thing. We don't allow robots to make mistakes. Robots work really well in rules-based environments, though, and in marketing, we have tons of rules-based environments. I think most people who are aware of what bots can do probably weren't surprised that when a robot beat the world's chess master Kasparov, this was years ago, but it's a rules-based environment. You can't cheat. You have to stick to the game and to the rules that are there, and these bots can calculate all these algorithms till the cows come home. Yet, when you put them in traffic, where a kid can run out in front of the road, or someone else drives and doesn't follow the rules, it goes wrong. Conversely, bots or humans are much better at the emotive piece, at emotional intelligence. Robots do not have, yet, emotional intelligence. They can't decide whether something is beautiful or make an ethical decision, and they really struggle with cultural differences as well. So there's a lot of challenges that bots have where we really need humans. I was quite surprised by this, though. This really threw me. This was in the Times 2 weeks ago. Bots apparently give better hugs than people. Max Planck Institute did a research, and they had people hug bots and people, and they just wanted to know how people felt. They preferred being hugged by a bot because it was just the right pressure and they didn't feel judged. So maybe those doctors is not such a bad idea, actually, because if you have a really embarrassing condition, you might rather tell it to a bot than to a person. Amazon's warehouse shut down when they spilled a gallon of this horrible butter sauce that they put on popcorn in America in the warehouse. The whole warehouse, they've got hundreds of thousands of bots to help. All really basic stuff. It just goes wrong when one thing fails or one thing goes wrong. So, some thoughts and takeaways. You would think maybe that everything is going to be about artificial intelligence and bots and automation in the next 10 years. But actually, without the human touch, that's not going to work. The human touch will be really important, but it's up to us to decide where we want to implement robots. It's not because we can implement it, do we implement it? Sure, we have to be able to do it, but then we still have to decide where it's desirable to get the robots into the workplace and into customer experience. So very quickly, 6 business recommendations. Only humans can provide the human touch. So in your customer experience, in your work environment, the human element is really key to the customer experience. They can form an emotional bond. They can delight a customer. It's very hard for a robot. Cobot and not robot. I want a cobot so badly to take away all the rubbish processes I have to go through in my job every day, every week. Get a little cobot to help do tasks for me. And then you can create a seamless end-to-end process in work and in customer experience. When you do use bots and AI, make sure that your customers know it. Don't let technology pretend something it isn't. I mentioned personalization. Please don't be creepy, also in B2B. Be transparent, be responsible in how you collect the data and how you keep it and how you use it. And trust is hard to earn and easy to lose. So we all will be under the microscope, and our customers will vote with our feet if we make mistakes, if we make ethically the wrong decision, if we don't keep their data in the appropriate manners. And finally, if you do implement robotics and AI, your workforce is really worried about this. People think they're going to lose their jobs, so involve them in it. HMRC, our lovely tax man, is actually working on a huge automation project. They've gone to their people and they said, what parts of your job could we automate? They had hundreds of recommendations from their own staff who weren't worried anymore about losing their jobs. They just thought, this is a really kind of simple part of my job I have to do day in, day out, and if I give that to a bot, I can focus on the harder parts of the work where you need to use my brain more. So by all means, automate, but involve your staff. So I already mentioned it. It's not the bots that decide where we're going to go with automation and AI. It's us who decide that. I don't think the world's going to look like this. I'm going to have my cobot, and he's going to help me. He, she, it is going to help me, and it's going to take over tasks, not jobs. So if you would like to see more of this research, there's a really good research paper available online that you can download. There's also a webinar with Professor James, who's very lovable and has a lot of additional insights he can share. So by all means, have a look here. Again, I'm Marjie Gould. I work for Verint. You can connect with me through Twitter, LinkedIn, and if you have any questions, come and find me around here because I think we run out of time.